Greetings everybody and welcome back. Got quite a bit to cover in this episode, so let's get right to it. I have been making some progress on Patchy Fog, the Fenwick Williams catboat I rescued from Gloucester, Massachusetts a couple years ago. I'm going to give you a brief overview of it this video, but the next video is going to be completely dedicated to all the work going on in this great old wooden boat. But also in this episode, I want to cover in detail something I've been asked about by some folks. I found a much better way to handle some of these spider crack issues in Gelcoat. Now, I've already done several videos on how to deal with these spider cracks, primarily by routing them out, cleaning out the route, filling it with fairing compound, sanding it down, fairing it out some more, then priming it and painting it. Now, that's always going to be my recommended procedure for these larger cracks. However, there are cases when these cracks are much smaller and much more prolific, and routing them out and filling them just really is not an option. And I think I found a better way to deal with that. Additionally, I am finally going to get down to painting the Herreshoff Eagle I've been working on forever. Sorry about the paint color, Halsey. This procedure did not go smoothly, so I'll show you how I fixed a big problem. But I do want to share with you and my fellow catboaters a little bit of an adventure I got to have. The Catboat Association holds its annual conference every year at the end of January up in the Mystic area. I've always wanted to go, but it just never quite worked out with timing. But this year I did, and I had a special reason to. I got to see some of the greats there, like Tony Davis from Aries Pond Boatyard and Jeff Marshall from Marshall Marine. Anybody who knows these fellows and their companies knows they make absolutely extraordinary museum-quality catboats. Absolute functional works of art. Right along with the regret of not having enough time in the exhibition hall was just not having enough time to talk to everybody that I wanted to. But I did get the chance to hear some amazing talks, and then I have to say I was very humbled by a very special honor from these folks.
Good afternoon, you all. The Broad Axe Award, as many of you know, was established in the fall of 1976 to recognize significant achievement in catboat construction. This includes, but is not limited to, the restoration or refitting of an old catboat or building in a new one. This year's recipient, Matt Klein, is being recognized for his complete restoration of a 1973 Herreshoff America catboat from 2018 to 2019. Matt found the America on the Cats for Sale website and bought it and brought it to Springfield, Ohio to work on it. The work entailed a total rebuild of the cockpit, making new companionway doors, stripping and refinishing all brightwork, repairing and refinishing the gaff jaws, making new mast hoops, removing and reseating all deck hardware, including some that no longer was needed, repainting the deck, mast, boom, and gaff, refurbishing the engine, rewiring the electrical system. He shared this story on the rebuild on the YouTube video blog Salvation Navy, which is dedicated to the restoration of sailboats. Not only did he show what worked, but what didn't. He showed both minor and major repairs, major repairs to the hull, problem solving, and new fabrications. For example, making a new mast spindle and mast hoops. He easily provided viewers with excellent tutorials on the use of fillers, epoxies, primers, and paints, as well as techniques for fiberglassing, installing hardware, applying non-skid, and even cleaning up navigation lights. Launched in 2018, he named the boat Seahawk after the hotel in Atlantic Beach, North Carolina, where his family vacationed at when he was a kid. For these reasons, we are proud to present the 2022 Broad Axe Award to Matt Klein.
Oh, thank you very much. Boy, as he was going through that list, I subconsciously kept having the sound of a cash register going off in my head. But, oh, man. It's a good thing I don't keep track of the money, because I don't recommend doing that. Thank you very much. It really means a lot to me. I know you hear that every time somebody gets a word, but it does, because I've always looked up to you folks. This is a group of people I admire, and to get a tip of the hat from a group like this is very humbling, and I thank you. I also send you greetings from the Indian Lake Yacht Club. We are the catboat capital of Logan County, Ohio. There's no group of people that is more qualified to save and restore and preserve these boats than the people in this room. So you're the first and last line of defense to keeping our history alive. I hope to keep doing that. I'm going to keep asking all of you questions on how to do it. And in my first opportunity, I'm going to get my catboat out to do some of these rendezvous. Thank you very much. My thanks to all the folks at the Catboat Association for giving me a memory I'll never forget. Speaking of things I'll never forget, we got to go through the Mystic Seaport's archive of wooden boats. Usually not open to the public, we got to wander through a building about the size of a city block, so full of boats you could barely move between them. And it wasn't just boats on the floor, they had racks upon racks upon racks, sometimes 3 and 4, maybe even 5 racks high, of wooden boats of every kind, including this beautiful old catboat which is in their collection. I could have spent all week here. I would have brought a hammock, I would have just strung up there and slept there for the night. I highly recommend it if you can find a way to get in and see it if you love wooden boats. Additionally, I got to meet some of my big heroes like Ben DeLong, who's helped me out quite a bit on some catboat questions, and I got to do a quick selfie with George Kirby himself. Really wish I'd had more time to talk to him and a lot of other folks. Maybe next year. Every once in a while, one of these kind of trips comes up right when you need it most, and I certainly did. Last time I was up in this area is when my daughter graduated from the Coast Guard Academy in the spring. When we left the area after her graduation, I thought I wasn't going to get to see this area again for quite a while. But you never know what comes up. I got to visit a place that I love and feel very much at home, get by the ocean again, which always does me good, and get my batteries charged so I could go back and work on some more projects. And speaking of boat projects, I mentioned to you about finding a better way to deal with some of the spider cracks on Gelcoat. And as I mentioned before, routing them out and filling them with fairing compound is still going to be the best way with these larger cracks. But sometimes you get a case where that's not really practical. In a previous video, I mentioned helping my nephew out with his 1960s Thistle. This was a case of total Gelcoat failure. While it had some larger cracks in the bow, there were just thousands of these smaller ones that would be completely impractical to route out and fill. If another way wasn't found, it was simply going to be a case of losing the boat because it wasn't worth stripping everything down and reapplying a brand new gel coat. Too much money, too much time, too much work. But in this case, I think I found a darn near perfect solution. Now first, we did have to take care of the major cracks in the bow. And the best way to do that is to again route them out, in this case using a little Dremel tool, and then filling those areas with fairing compound. TotalBoat's Total Fair product is one of my favorites that they make. It's an incredibly versatile product. And it's easy to use. You mix up a 1-to-1 ratio of blue and yellow, mix it together until it's a nice Heathkit mint green. Trowel it into the carved out areas and skim it off, let it cure. Sand it down and apply another skim coat. And sand it down again to make it as fair as you possibly can. And now it's time to apply a brand new substitute for a new gel coat. You've seen me use the Total Protect product before from TotalBoat. It's a fantastic barrier coat option to prevent osmosis below the waterline, but I found it also makes not only an extraordinarily and tough paint, but the waterproof epoxy base, as well as being self-leveling, have a great characteristic of being able to fill in small cracks and crevices. And it does so without the necessity for much more invasive prep work. I'll include a link in the show notes below on the episode I used to apply it to the Herreshoff Eagle, where I use it as a barrier coat on the bottom. I give detailed instructions on how to mix it, how to prep it, some safety protocols. It's a great product, but it does require a little bit of homework. Now, this product does require a really clean surface for application for good results. Although I cover this in the other videos where I use this product, it's worth mentioning again. Do not use this product without a respirator. A dust mask or a rag over your mouth or whatever is not going to cut it. A properly fitted and filtered respirator will allow you to use this product safely and effectively. As you can see, we had to apply our first coat of this product after the sun went down. We were simply running out of time and had to get the job done. After my nephew applied the first coat, I applied the next coat the next day. I try to alternate the direction with each coat the way the barrier coat goes on. In this case, more of a vertical application. The next one more horizontal. Then the next one vertical again. We got 4 coats on here, and while I hadn't tried this method before for a Gelcoat failure, I was absolutely blown away. I was convinced that it was going to fill in the smaller cracks, but I wondered if I'd still be able to see them in the final product. And I can't. It is an absolutely perfectly smooth application. All of the gel coat cracks are filled in, and the end result looks like it just came out of the factory with a brand new gel coat on it. It doesn't even need primer, it's now ready for paint. So my nephew moved it back to his house to apply the paint, and I got to do the same thing to my Herreshoff Eagle. Now, I have been working on this boat for a long time, and it's time to put this into high gear and get this thing done. And I really couldn't wait any longer to get it painted. I'm just tired of looking at it this way. So I sanded off the black paint that a previous owner had put on it and got down to the green gel coat, which is what every single one of these Herreshoff Eagles was made with. I got it sanded and faired down and ready for some primer, and then it was time to choose the paint. Now I am going to use some TotalBoat 1-part polyurethane paint, like their Bristol beige, on things like the spars, but I wanted to have a little bit of fun with the paint color for the hull. So I went back to a tried and true product, paints by George Kirby. Now which one to choose? Now, just as a side note, in a speech given to the Catboat Association a few years ago by Halsey Herreshoff, he mentioned he was not a big fan of boats that were painted red. He said it's not a fast color. That was the color of the boat that lost the America's Cup, so he's not a big fan of red boats, but yeah, this is the one right here. Sorry, Halsey. Gotta be red. Now, I haven't told you much about this, but I actually have another Herreshoff Eagle that I'm fixing up, and there's a little bit of a story behind that, and I'm going to leave it its original green, but I didn't want 2 Herreshoff Eagles with the same color. But it's time to get this old girl painted red. The forecast called for some heavier winds on the day that I was going to paint it, so I made sure to really secure the plastic underneath the water line down very securely with things like the lead bricks and pigs that were in the boat. Nothing's going to move that, right? Now, considering that I was going to spray this, the paint needs to be thinned down a little bit. I got a plastic paint bucket with a nice nozzle in it that I can pour easily from the hardware store, so I can keep a special mixture of this paint ready to go for the next round and don't have to keep remixing it every time. One of the things that I found to help mix it properly is this viscosity cup. I'm going to leave a link to a video that I found that shows you how to use one of these, but basically you add solvent to it until it gets to the point where it goes through at a certain amount of time. Getting a good paint to solvent ratio in a paint sprayer gives you the best results, and this little tool will help you do that. Now, with each application of paint, I try to do what I mentioned before with the epoxy barrier coat. I might start off with kind of a horizontal motion to it, with the spray direction of the gun in more of a vertical position, and then go back and forth, keeping my wrists a little bit flexible so that when you run into the end of the spray, you can tail it off a little bit rather than remaining in one place, and that is one thing you want to avoid. Don't ever stop into one place and let it sit for a second, or you will get runs. Always keep it moving. Once I go back then, I'll turn the spray pattern to a more of a horizontal position and then do a vertical motion. The key to getting a good paint job, as I understand it, is several thin coats. As much as I want to see this thing done with one pass, it's going to take several. And it probably isn't going to look that great with the first couple. However, there can be other things that make it even more difficult, like a wind gust of 30 miles an hour, which apparently is enough to make a thin piece of plastic into a sail powerful enough to overturn a 50-pound lead pig. At which point, unbeknownst to me at the moment, the plastic then flopped up, blew up, and stuck to the entire starboard side of the boat with its nice red, wet paint. In the immortal words of Yosemite Sam,
like a fresh, like back and floated back car in that
Now, I did my best to try and recover this major mistake. I waited for it to dry, then did a very light sanding, trying to take up off the ripples and just the mess. Not sure why it turned out to look like the logo of a Ford Mustang, but there it is. But no matter how well I tried and finally to sand it, it just was not working, so I was going to have to redo the entire starboard side. I got one of those cheap tents you can buy on eBay to put around it to help protect it a little bit more. I also sanded down the entire starboard side and applied new primer. So with the tent up, blocking a little bit of wind, better anchoring on the plastic, I gave it another go and it turned out much better. It's certainly not perfect, but it's a pretty darn good job. There are a few places that are a little blotchy, not quite as shiny as others, so when I get good weather this spring, I'm definitely going to need to do some buffing and some other work on it to really polish it up. But unfortunately, I ran out of summer, and this was the best I could do for what I had. But even for a red boat, she sure looks a whole lot better than when I first got her. Now, a real quick update on the Fenwick Williams Catboat. I have it under a large tent as well, and been doing everything I can on somewhat decent days to go out there and work on it. I did a lot of documentation and a lot of photography as it stands now, doing my best to try and keep track of where everything goes and how everything was laid out, along with its condition. But I now have the entire deck off. Regrettably, I wasn't able to save as much of the teak deck as I had hoped, but a lot of it is still, I think, in decent shape and can be reused. Once the deck is off, I got a decent look at the internal structure. A lot of the deck beams and carlins are, as I suspected, pretty well shot with iron sickness. However, they're very simple structures and they really won't take a lot to refabricate. The next step is to start removing the superstructure so that I can get to everything below. I'll start off with the seat benches and the cockpit combing and then move on to the cabin. After that, I'll start to remove the cockpit sole and get the old Atomic 4 engine out of there. But I'll save that for the next episode. Always a big shout out and thank you to the folks at TotalBoat for their sponsorship of this project. If you look down in the show notes, you'll see a discount code that'll get you a few bucks off your next order. I hope everybody's looking forward to the 2023 sailing season and your boat's about ready to go in the water. Until then, remember, keep calm and work on your boat.